Today in the United States, we celebrate Veterans Day. In the Commonwealth countries, it's called Remembrance Day. But it was originally called Armistice Day, as it commemorated the armistice that effectively ended World War I, that terrible, bloody, and virtually meaningless war, which came to an end at the 11th hour on the 11th day of the 11th month, 11 a.m. Central European Time on November 11th, 1918. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Saturday, November 11th, 2023. I've spoken before about my grandfather's experience on the front lines at the end of World War I. We don't have any letters or journals that he wrote that tell us what he thought or how he felt, but it doesn't take a genius to imagine that he was probably pretty scared during the last few weeks of the war. He was a second lieutenant in command of a small machine gun company within the 357th Infantry Brigade of the 90th Division. His group was pretty close to the center of the line in the Meuse-Argonne offensive, which remains one of the deadliest campaigns in U.S. military history, second only to the Battle of Normandy in World War II. We have only a few artifacts from his time in the Army, including his helmet, which sports a dent in it, apparently from a piece of shrapnel. We also know that his unit survived at least one gas attack, and of course, we have the American flag that covered his casket after he died of cancer in 1949. Family lore has it that when World War II broke out and my father wanted to transfer from the University of Texas to the Naval Academy, my grandmother was apoplectic, probably because she remembered the worry of sending her young man to France in 1918, and possibly because she knew something of the horrors he had experienced in battle, even if, as most soldiers do, he never actually told her about them. I suspect my father defied his mother's wishes because he may have known that if he had remained at UT, he might have been drafted and have had little choice of where he would serve. My grandmother had no illusions about the glories of war. For her, it was only a source of heartache and worry. So why do we keep fighting wars anyway? Well, that is one of those imponderable questions with no good answer. My own answer, and it's pretty simplistic, is that we will continue to fight wars as long as human beings keep on acting like human beings. That is, placing their own tribal interests above the interests of others. As long as some people see violence and warfare as the best way to achieve their country's or their tribe's ends, wars will continue to be fought. Or to put it in even simpler terms, as long as there is sin in the world, there will be war. Which brings me back to veterans, whom we honor today. There are some people who glorify war, but most of us treat it as a tragic part of the human condition. And among the majority of us who see it this way, some willingly place themselves in harm's way when called upon. They are really the ones we honor today. I don't know the exact circumstances why my grandfather went into the Army in 1917, but I have a pretty good idea. The United States, after having stayed out of the war for as long as it could, entered the war after Germany tried to entice Mexico to enter the war on the German side with a promise of returning to Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona to Mexico after the war. That and the sinking of several U.S. merchant marine ships turned the tide of public opinion in favor of entering the war. When the United States entered the war, it had one of the smallest armies in the world and was ill-prepared to wage war. And so on May 18, 1917, Congress passed the Selective Service Act, and some 2.8 million men were drafted, while another 2 million volunteered. I assume my grandfather volunteered since he ended up as an officer, which is to say he, like many others, volunteered to serve when called. I am very sure he would just as soon have stayed in Cameron, Texas with his family and continued to grow cotton on his farm outside of town. But he didn't. When called, he served. It wasn't glorious or even fun, but it had to be done. And whether drafted or volunteering, People like him did what they were asked to do. That is the spirit we honor today. It's not about glorifying war, but about honoring those who serve, even when it would be better just to stay home. The 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918. It continues to ring out today. And now may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.